Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total's Party Skills. It is the last day of the year 2021, and so I guess I'm just going to do that generic YouTube thing and talk about some of the best things of 2021. I'm going to do the best five games of 2021, or at least book releases of 2021 here in a second. Just a few honorable mentions. Favorite movie of 2021, Matrix Resurrections. Yes, there's a lot to be said about that movie. However, the reason why I like it is I wasn't going into it thinking I was going to get a fun and exciting Matrix adventure, because there's really no circumstance, even if Lana Wachowski had taken the entire project as seriously and earnestly as she could and had put her all into just making as good of a Matrix 4 as possible, it still would have sucked, because there's like no natural place to go from how the original Matrix trilogy ended. Looking at this as a piece of visual art, that's admittedly more like Banksy than it is Leonardo da Vinci. I don't know. It inspired more thought and talk with me and my wife than any other movie I'd seen this year. So, Matrix Resurrections, #1 movie for 2021. Best album, I'm going to give that to Blue Elephant by Matt Berry. If you haven't discovered the smooth acid jazz sounds of Matt Berry, you're missing out, so go check that out. Best TV show that's not an MCU show. I guess tentatively I'm going to give that to Dexter New Blood so far, even though it's technically not finished. Best MCU show, I'm going to still say, is WandaVision. They started off strong, and I've yet to see another MCU show on Disney Plus that surpassed that. Show that has shown most improvement since its last season for 2021, I'm going to give that to Star Trek Lower Decks. Season 2 of Lower Decks, much better than Season 1 of Lower Decks. So I guess that's about it for, the honorable mention stuff. So we're going to look at what I consider to be the best role-playing games of 2021. In no particular order. This is not like a top 5. It's kind of more like by their own categories. Best non-D20, aka the most consensual book of 2021. I'm going to give that to the Dune Adventures in the Imperium by Modiphius. It's an unfinished game, which some people like. I feel that they had fully developed house rules in the Klingon Star Trek rulebook, so I don't know why they couldn't have ported that over and given you complete and total house rules for Dune. And I also find it a little directionless. But is that really its fault, or is that just more the fault that the Dune setting seems like it might be a good setting for a role-playing game, but it might secretly not be. But in terms of book production, it's cool. And this also, I believe, was the first official rule book from Modiphius that introduced the wonderful world of safety and consent rules for tabletop role-playing games. So let's all give a nice round of applause for Dune here for bringing us that. Best overall of what I got here in front of me. We're gonna go with the obligatory, what was the best new 5th edition D&D book that came out this year? This is a low bar. Saying the book I'm about to say is not necessarily the highest amount of praise, but like when you look at its field of competition, I mean, what am I going to choose? Strixhaven, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. No, I'm going to go ahead and say it's Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, because at least just as a functional, useful source book with source material that you might be able to use in your games, because if you want some more dragon-themed stuff going on, it's got that. So at least it doesn't trick you into oh, we only got 20 pages of stuff on dragons, and the rest of it's all just full of dragon-themed adventures that don't involve any combat and take you all the way up to level 8. No, none of that kind of shit. For the most part, it's just a straightforward, simple source book. There's a few things iffy about it, and you can watch my previous video where I talk about Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. The video is called Fizban's Treachery of Dragons, so be sure to check that out for a more in-depth, hard-hitting analysis. But you know, if you put a gun to my head and tell me I have to pick a favorite 5th edition D&D book that came out this last year, I'll go with this one. Best OSR product that came out in 2021 is a bit easier for me to decide. I'm going to go with Old Swords Reign. You know, like no relation to this guy who wrote this, Scott Myers. It's just a solid, simple rule book that, you know, takes most of the newer stuff in terms of like rule innovations that came out of 5th edition and just reformat it into, you know, your old school AD&D. Yeah, it's probably reminds me maybe a little bit more of AD&D than it does BX D&D, but you know, the same class, your basic 4 races, your basic 4 classes. Toning down the power levels of the player characters is a good chunk of why I like it, and yet it preserves the good rule mechanics that have come out of 5th edition. That you know, so and also it's got a good price point. You can find it on drive-thru and on Amazon. I very much recommend it if you're looking for an alternate rules book to be able to run a D20 style fantasy game that isn't branded with D&D stuff on it, but you can still use it to backdoor convert modern and classic D&D modules into something playable. This is a, you know, excellent way to go. I guess second to last, favorite book that I put out, that I wrote this year, I'm going to give that to Expedition to Ancient Egypt. In terms of just its overall concept, I feel it's probably your best entry-level book for your typical average fantasy role player. The rules are simple. There's a lot you can do with the setting. It's already got 2 source books and more on the way, and all that kind of good stuff. It's hard to choose between all my various babies which one I'm going to say is the favorite for the year, but you know, it's one of the top 2 in sales. So between it and Planet Matriarchy, it's hard to tell exactly which one has been the most popular. I do know that someone out there has actually run a session of this game and has reported, you know, back what sounded like relative success just in terms of being able to use the rules and get the players to understand what the hell they're doing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, of the books I've done, I'll point to this one. And down there in the description box, no doubt at some point after I've done recording this, I will get around to posting a link so you can look at this yourself in both print and in digital PDF download. And finally, overall favorite RPG release of the entire year for 2021 is the 30th anniversary edition of the original Rifts rulebook. Maybe a little bit of cheating here, since this is a reprint of a classic early 90s role-playing game core rulebook, but it has been out of print for a long time, and it does have 30th anniversary stamped on it, so it's not like it's some battered old copy off eBay. It's really nice. Just, you know, having the cover, getting to see the original art again, the original write-up for the setting, and also like that the original balance of player character options that doesn't have all the power creep additions that these same classes had in the Rift's Ultimate version of the rulebook, which has been the primary rulebook available for like the last 15 plus years. It's really nice seeing this back. I greatly prefer it over Ultimate Edition. And if you're a Rifts fan, if they still have copies of this available on Palladium Books, it's, you know, it's worth it. Of their various hardcovers that I've gotten from them, it is the best just in terms of the actual quality of the hardcover itself, and you can't argue with the material. The original, the one, the only, the OG Rifts, which, you know, yeah, best of 2021. Thanks very much for watching. Be sure to hit like and subscribe, leave comments below, and tell me about the things that you enjoyed in the year 2021. And may we just please get to the next 24 hours without anything else fucking stupid happening, please. Thanks, and stay waspinated.